Do you dream of writing a novel? When you feel the urgency to write a novel, you aren't making it up. When that urgency won't let go, there's a reason. Turn your readers into raving fans. Reveal the power of your voice and your story. Writing is an act of courage, and you have what it takes. How to Write a Novel That Sells by Lana McAra will take you across the finish line. Visit howtowriteanovelthatsells.net and take that powerful next step now.
Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where you will discover tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Here you'll find new energy, new perspectives, new resources, and new ideas that will spark your creativity into a blaze of brilliance. It's easier than you think. Be sure you visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, get out your notebook, tune in, and let's get started.
Are you a history buff? I am. That's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Lana McAra. Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast, tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Today, I am delighted to welcome to our podcast, Sharon Michalove. Sharon began publishing while working on a PhD in educational policy studies. She wrote various articles and papers, but her dream was to write crime fiction. She's a woman after my heart. After she retired from the history department at the University of Illinois, she returned to her hometown, Chicago, where she decided to give fiction one more try. With 2 short stories published under a pseudonym, she decided to go back to her real name and write romantic suspense. Her first novel, At First Sight, was published in 2021. After reaching the semifinals in the soon-to-be famous Illinois Author Contest, it was nominated for a Rhone Award from Indie Tales magazine. Besides her prized membership in the Blackbird Writers Flock, Sharon is currently president of the Chicagoland chapter of Sisters in Crime and an at-large board member of Mystery Writers of America Midwest. Her Global Security Unlimited series was a finalist for the Chanticleer International Book Awards for Genre Series. And Sharon, I am the president of the Sisters in Crime chapter in northeastern Florida.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to meet other presidents.
Yes, I'm so glad to meet you. And I remember seeing that in your bio before, but it slipped my mind until just now when I read it again. Yes, we are siblings.
Yes, we are.
That's what
we don't have to be presidents to be siblings.
we don't have to.
All have to be as sync members.
Right. I love Sisters in Crime. It is my favorite, and I'm so thrilled that I get to participate. Great group of people. So anyone listening, if you're a crime writer, check out Sisters in Crime. And we do love misters to come in with our sisters. So,
and actually, even if you're just a reader, we still welcome you. So don't feel that you have to be penning a novel at this point. All you have to do is like to read crime fiction.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up, because a lot of the people who attend our meetings are readers. And they just love learning about different parts of crime writing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was it about fiction that pulled you in from the world of academia?
Well, actually, fiction pulled me in long before academia. My mother read to me when I was little. And one day I said to her, this was when I was an adult, I said, Mom, when I was about 4, which is when my first brother was born, I said, you stopped reading to me. Was that because Rich was born and he didn't have time anymore? And she goes, no, you could read by then. I didn't need to read to you anymore. So I've been reading all my life. And I started reading mysteries before I was 10 years old. I was already reading Agatha Christie, not just Nancy Drew and all those. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be Agatha Christie. So I've always had this pull toward crime fiction and toward fiction. And I tried writing murder mysteries over and over and over throughout my adult life with no success. I could get through a chapter or two. I didn't know how to do clues. You would think if you were reading it all the time, you would know how to do all those things. Turns out it's not that easy. But I went to college and then I went on to graduate school, and started doing history. And I didn't have time to write anything else because I had a full-time job. I worked in a variety of places at the U of I, but eventually I ended up in the history department. So I had a full-time academic professional job advising students and planning courses and all that kind of thing for the department. And then I finally got my PhD at 45. And then I needed to start publishing history. So I did that. And then when I retired, I was still doing some of that. I didn't really go back to fiction writing till after my husband died in 2013. Even then, I didn't do that right away. I had other things that I was doing. I was doing some teaching. I was doing some knitting and just trying to cope with being by myself for the first time in my life. And then I moved back to Chicago in 2017, and I needed to start making friends again because I didn't have a lot of friends in Chicago. I had some family. And so I joined a group called Just Write Chicago and started going to their meetings. They had writing meetings several times a week. You could go and write with people at different coffee houses. And in 2018, I finally had an idea for a book, and I got it to work. First, it was supposed to be a romantic comedy, and then it was supposed to be a murder mystery, and it ended up being romantic suspense. And that combination seems to work well for me. So I've got 3 books in that series, and then I've got an actual murder mystery that also has romantic suspense in it, but it's an actual murder mystery. So yeah, it's amazing when you finally figure out kind of sort of how it works, although every book is different.
Yes, every book is different. And I wandered around a little bit too when I was trying to figure out, what do I really want to write? What do I love to write? Yeah, I've done a little of this and a little of that. That's for sure.
Well, the problem was I always wanted to write mystery, but I couldn't make it work. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. What am I going to do instead? And the first time I wrote At First Sight, I was worried I wouldn't have enough plot. And at 110,000 words with 2 plots, one at which did not dovetail in the end. If you're going to have 2 subplots, then you need to have them dovetail, and they didn't. So I took one of them out and decided I would concentrate on the other one. Plus, I had the romance in there by that point. So I went down to 70,000 words, and by the time I finished the book, adding stuff in and smoothing things over, it was back to 90,000 words. So yeah.
Wow, it is a process. We don't do this because it's easy.
No, and I didn't find my voice right away. So because I was an academic writer, I was writing third person, and that was okay. And I sent it off to some friends, and it was okay. And then I let it sit because it was COVID. It was 2020, and I'd gotten back comments from a publisher. It was a rewrite and resubmit, and in the end, I decided I would try and get myself going again by writing the first scene in first person present, believe it or not, which they always say is the worst, the hardest. It comes so naturally to me, I could not believe it. And so all of mine are dual POV, and for the most part, some of the short stories are in third person or in past tense, but for the most part, I write in first person present tense. And when I sent it off to the people who would like the third person, not the publisher, because I ended up publishing it myself, but they were like, oh, well, we liked it before, but this is so much better.
Yes. Yes, the immediacy and being right in the head of the, yes.
Well, out that my strong point is writing dialogue. So that goes really well with writing first person.
Oh,
yes. And it also solved another problem for me, which is head hopping, because I would slip out of the POV partway through the scene And that was bad. And then I'd have to go back and try and fix all that. Well, when you're writing in first person, you don't do that.
True. Yeah.
And
It
then
has to
people said, well, you're cheating. And I said, no, I'm not cheating. It's just a technique so that I can get it to work properly.
Yeah, it's totally valid.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Where do you get your ideas though? I mean, how do you come up with a new story?
So it was interesting because I had these two characters who are the characters from my first two books, and they were just running around in my head, but I didn't know much about them. And one day I posted on Facebook, I have two characters and no plot. And what do I get back from people? Well, you better find a plot, Sharon. So I took a plotting class, and that's where I came up with my first idea. And I was like, I'll never come up with another idea. This is so hard. I just can't do this. One of the things that happened after I started writing was everything I see suggests a story. I cannot believe how many books I could write if I had the time and energy to write like my 75 ideas that I have right now. And it's because I'll see a story and that'll give me an idea. I'll see some object and that'll give me an idea. It's just amazing. So if you're worried that you won't come up with new ideas, the more you write, the more ideas just roll in. Some of them work, some of them don't work so well. But yeah, and now I had always sworn I'd never write historical fiction, and now I have an idea um for a four book series that's historical fiction. And I think that this time through I could actually make that work if once I get the time to write those big books, because they would all be big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so ideas come everywhere. I've got a journal in my living room and I'm dashing for it because sometimes I see something on YouTube, sometimes a snatch of a song or cognitive dissonance. When something doesn't make sense to me and I'm thinking, why did that newscaster say that? That doesn't make sense. All of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's a story.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what was this person thinking when they did X? And then you try and unravel some interesting way that they might have been thinking about this and why this happened. So yeah, it's always interesting. The other thing that gives me ideas is I like to travel. I haven't been traveling a lot, but I'm going to be traveling a lot this year. And I like to write about places that I've been. And I just read something today that somebody said, well, I wrote my first book and then I was going to have my second book set somewhere else in the series. And my agent told me that if you're going to write a series, you need to set them in the same place every time. And I thought, I don't do that. And people aren't saying to me, well, your first one's in Chicago and your second one, they travel to London and then Scotland and then Paris. And your third one, they end up in Vancouver. And nobody seems to mind that. And so that's... Yeah, I don't think that there is a hard and fast rule for anything in writing. I think if it works, if your readers like it, then that's what you do. And to me, my ideal reader, I had to do this exercise today. I had to come up with my ideal reader. And essentially what I did was I took the elements that I put into my books and said, my ideal reader would like these things: food, travel, smart dialogue, mature characters, that kind of thing. So, that's what, so in a way, my ideal reader is me as the writer, but, that's what I write well. So if people don't like that, then they're probably just not going to read my books, but okay, can't please everybody all the time.
Yes. Well, you want to narrow in, right? You want to narrow in on a specific little group of people who want to buy your book all the time. And
Mhm.
by the way, have you ever heard of the Mrs. Palafox books?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yes. I read them originally when when they came out. I'm old, so and I have them all. I have a subscription to Audible, and I could get almost all of them on Audible for free because they're all in Audible Plus catalog. So I can listen to them because when I was going through all my problems with cataracts, I started listening instead of reading the ebooks. And I've really gotten hooked on just listening. And in fact, I like listening so much that four of my books are on Audible. I spent
Yes.
a huge amount of money, but I really like having. Not only do I like having the audiobooks, I'm not like most authors. I actually like listening to my audiobooks. So I got to pick who my audiobook narrators were, and they're wonderful. And so
Yeah.
I don't spend my time going, oh, why did I write that sentence? I spend my time enjoying the fact that they read so well. Uh,
Yes, yes. I've got a professionally done book on Audible. It's called Reaping the Whirlwind.
mhm.
And I just love that guy's voice. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those younger people who may not know who Mrs. Palafox is, she's an elderly woman who becomes a courier for the CIA, and she travels. Every book is in a different location. She's going to Russia. She's going to the desert. She's going to the Middle East. She's going everywhere.
Yeah, but a lot of readers are armchair travelers. Even if they're regular travelers, they still want to read about places that they haven't been. And books like that just take you in to another world that you may or may not ever go to. Sometimes I want to know about a place that I'm not planning to travel to. So, or it gives you an idea of some place you do want to go to.
Yes, and you get inspired. It's very safe. You don't have to worry about getting mugged, getting lost, or getting sick.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like the cold places on Earth, and in 2023, I finally got the chance to go to Antarctica, and then last December I went to Iceland, and I liked Iceland so much. I was only there for a couple of days because it was a stopover on my way back from Paris. Um, I ended up booking a trip to Scotland because I'm going to a conference in Scotland, and I'm flying Icelandair again, and I'm going to have 7 days in Iceland in May. And
Wow.
planning to write a book I'm hoping it's going to have some suspense in it, but it may just be a romance. But it's about a photographer who comes to Iceland to do a thing on volcanoes and meets a volcanologist.
Okay.
So
Wow, that is so exciting. I love that. Yeah, and the fact that you can go there. Do you ever write about a place you haven't been to?
yes, so my third book was my main character was from Vancouver. He'd been in the first two books. He's French Canadian, and so one of my beta readers on my first book goes, "He's French Canadian. How can he be from Vancouver? He needs to be from Quebec." And I'm like, "There's 50,000 French Canadians in British Columbia. I don't think that's a problem." I do my research. So the third book was about him, and he takes the woman in the book to meet his mother, who still lives in Vancouver. And I did a ton of research because I have never been to Vancouver. The only place I've been in Canada is Sault Ste. Marie, which is right on the border with Michigan, and Toronto. That's it. That's the only places I've been in Canada. And when I finished it, I know a bunch of people in Vancouver, and they gave me some suggestions, but I did a lot of research. They suggested some neighborhoods, but I found one that worked really well for me because it turns out it's a neighborhood that was very arty in the 60s, but it is filled with bungalows. And Chicago is filled with bungalows. And I thought, this is something that my character, who's from Chicago, is really going to notice when she gets to JL's house, is that his mother lives in this bungalow, and it's a very similar kind of bungalow to what you'd have in Chicago. So I did that kind of research, and at the end, a friend of mine read it, and she was originally from Quebec, and she lives in the Vancouver area, and she said, "You got everything right." She said, "You got all the French Canadian stuff right. You got the Vancouver stuff right." Um, when I wrote my Michigan book, I was at BoucherCon, and this guy comes up to me. I was on a panel, and he comes up to me and he says, "Hi, my name's Terry Shepard." And I said, "Nice to meet you." And he said, I know the moderator of this panel. So I thought I'd read one book by each person. He said, "When I went to Amazon, I decided on Dead in the Alley because it was the first one that came up." He said, "So I have a question for you." I said, "What's your question?" He said, "When did you move from Michigan to Illinois?" I said, I've never lived in Michigan. And I've been to Michigan, but I've never lived in Michigan. And he said, well, I'm originally from Ann Arbor, Detroit. He said, but I'm guessing that you've spent a lot of time in Traverse City. And I said, no, I've never been there, but I did base my story on that. And two people I know that turn out were from Traverse City said the same thing. So, so I love actually to write about places. I love to write about places I've been to because I know them well. But then I also love to write about places I haven't been to because of all that I learn. And as a historian, I love to do research. So, even research on Chicago, I can't tell you what I've learned about Chicago architecture, about restaurants I'd never been to before. All different kinds of things that I can introduce people to about my own city.
That is very interesting. Terry Shepard is a good friend of mine. I've had him on the podcast. He's just a great fella. He's
He
a
is,
great
and he's had me on his podcast too. So
Yes, yes. He's a
yeah.
member of our Sisters in Crime chapter here in
Oh,
Jackson.
I'm not surprised. He does live in Florida now, but I mean,
Yeah.
he's lived in several places in Illinois besides. And when he does his Jessica Ramirez series, a lot of times he comes up and does the book launch in Chicago because the person who is the model for his character lives in Chicago, and he usually does it kind of in the Pilsen neighborhood or somewhere around there because that's kind of the Latino neighborhood in Chicago. So it's very cool. I'm hoping to see him at BoucherCon this year because he doesn't get up here much, and I don't get down to Florida at all.
Yeah. Yeah. He lives in Jacksonville. Yep. Wow, that's cool. I had no idea you knew Terry.
Now that's how I know him. You can't tell from this, but I am not a person I'm kind of an introvert, and I tend not to meet people unless they talk to me first. But Terry's the type of person who comes and talks to everybody.
Yes. Yes, everybody's best friend. Yep.
Yeah, he is. He is. And he's a great friend to have.
Yes. Yes, he is. So when you are doing your research, do you find that your background in the history uh, is actually helping you? How does it help you?
Okay, so it helps me in a couple of ways. One way it helps me, and I also have a degree in library science, is that I'm really good at doing research. So I'm really good at posing the questions, looking at books. So that's part of my problem is I'm always buying books on the subjects that I'm writing about. But I'm also good at getting answers out of Google and all that kind of thing. Um, the biggest problem is not falling down rabbit holes and spending days and spending more like minutes where I go, oh, okay, this works for me. I'll take this, whatever. But it means that I'm good at looking up, for example, my books aren't historical, but a lot of times they take place when I wrote At First Sight, it takes place in 2014, and they go to a bunch of restaurants because my characters all like food. And and they're in their 40s, so they're not like going to discos, and they're not like doing. I don't have as many things for them to do, so they go to restaurants and stuff like that. So then I'm finding a restaurant. Did it actually exist then in Chicago? Because I use real ones. Then I have to go find the menu from then, as opposed to what they might have now if they're still in existence, and that kind of thing. So I'm really good at doing that. But the other thing that I do is I like to write about the history of stuff. So, for example, the Global Security Unlimited company works out of the Rookery in Chicago. And so I gave a whole bunch of information about the building of the Rookery. I took a tour so that I could see the conference room on the 11th floor because it's you can only see it by appointment. It's an office building. You can't go everywhere. And that was where Burnham and Root actually created the plans for the 1893 World's Fair.
Ooh.
They designed the building, and then that's where they had their office. And you can go up there and you can see the chairs that they sat in, and you can see a whole lot of papers from there and all that kind of thing. So I do that a lot. I talked about what the brass doors on the elevators look like and all that kind of stuff. So it was so So I do that. I do that when I write about other places. So, if I'm writing about London, for example, I might talk about how this building where this particular thing is housed, that they go to, a hotel or whatever, was, built in Victorian times, and why it was built and what it might have been originally if it wasn't originally a hotel. Same thing with looking at the history of restaurants. If I want to write about a restaurant in Paris that's 200 years old. So I do a lot of that. And then in the second book, it was supposed to end in Istanbul, and my editor told me that it needed to end sooner, and so it had to end in Paris. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't find the kind of place in Paris that this would happen. And because it happens in an alley, and it's supposed to mimic another thing that happened in an alley. And so I didn't know exactly what to do, because alleys in Paris are like, they're little streets with stores on them. You can't have a car going down it. You can't have the kind of explosion I wanted to have, all those kinds of things. So so I found a town 12 miles outside of Paris that had been destroyed by it's near Charles de Gaulle, and they had a plane crash into the town, and it totally destroyed the town. And then they kind of built another town next to it. And I could use that creepy remnant of that town that still had the church and still had the cemetery to make that work. But I had like 2 days. She's like, I have to have it back like by this time, because I don't have any more time to work on your book. And I got it done, but boy, I'll tell you, I was working 12, 15 hours to try and figure out where it was going to be, how I was going to make that work, how the story would unfold at that point, because it was pretty much almost the end of the book. And
Wow.
yeah, so
It does get intense at times, that's for sure.
oh yeah. And I think when I write my historicals, when I finally get to them, they're about a guy. I found a murder that took place in Lucca, Italy, in the 16th century, but it's a very famous family, and I can move it back to the 15th century and fictionalize it, and then have this guy essentially hiding around Europe, because the one family swears vengeance on him, and he didn't do it, but anyway, and actually in the original thing he did, but anyway, he doesn't in my story. And I needed to be tied into something else. It couldn't just be like the fugitive in the 15th century. So I decided that even though he came from a family that were silk merchants, that I was going to make him somebody who was fascinated with printing. So he goes to in each book he goes to a different printing center in Europe, and so it's all about what happens to him there. You don't find out exactly how the mystery ends until you get to the end of the last book. But Bruges, Cologne, London, Venice, all these different places, and I've been to all of those.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Terrific. So what's next for you? What's your next book release after this?
So right now I've been writing short stories, and I still have 2 short stories that I owe for anthology. So right now I'm writing one that's about a wedding in Montreal. It's 15,000 word kind of almost novella. And I'm making it a suspense story. So they meet. It's kind of love at first sight, but she's engaged to somebody else, and I'm still trying to kind of puzzle out exactly how he gets involved. But it turns out that the guy that she's engaged to is not a good guy. So and he's an operative for Global Security Unlimited. And then I have to write another. I've written a couple of Regency romance stories, and I have one more of those to write. So I'll be doing that. It's about redeeming a rake, and it goes along with the one I had published this past August called Medway Meeting. It's the cousin of the guy I wrote about there. And then I'm hoping to go back to the one I've been writing for like a year and a half now, that's called Murder at the Great Jane Austen Cook-Off.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. It takes place in Hampshire, England, and it's a cooking contest, and people start to die. I have two amateur sleuths, but but the police are also in there, and the police are constantly trying to discourage them from getting involved. But the reason they get involved is they're both contestants, and it's more likely that the other chefs will talk to them than they'll talk to the police. So they do find out things as it goes along. So it's about a third done. It's at about 30,000 words right now. So I'm hoping that I might have that finished by the end of the year.
okay, awesome. So many ideas, so little time, right?
I know, it's terrible. I mean, when I was in Paris in December for this writing retreat, I came up with ideas for 4 books while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is the Iceland one, but the other 3 ones that takes place in a jazz club in Paris. Another one takes place in actually it takes place in New York. They're all sisters, so they take place in different places. But the Paris one is called Paris Heartbreak Cafe.
Wow, Sharon, this has been amazing. You have a free gift for us?
Yeah, I could have a free gift for you. In fact, I could have a free gift for everybody if they want a free short story. Otherwise, if you want me to send something to a person, I can send one of my books. And I should show what the books look like. So this is Dead in the Alley.
Mm-hmm.
Takes place in Michigan. And then the Global Security Unlimited ones are At First Sight, At the Crossroads. I'm not into bare-chested romantic suspense, guys. Sorry. I'm happy to send any one of them to one of your listeners if they would like, and all I would need is the name and address, and you need to figure out who it would be, and get
What we typically do is we say, go to YouTube. If you're listening somewhere else, go to YouTube to this episode with Sharon Michalove and put a comment in the put in a comment and put in the word. And you want to pick a special word?
Oh, let's see. What would be a good word? Oh, that's hard. Why don't we just put in suspense?
Suspense is a good word. Put in the word suspense in the comments because you'd have to listen to the whole episode in order to get that word suspense. And then we'll randomly select one of the people who does. And then we'll get your information. So that's cool. That's a cool
Yeah,
contest
that's
right
great.
there.
Yeah, I'm very happy to do that, and I actually have books in my house, so I can autograph it and everything.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. This was great. I never know how they're going to turn out, but I'm very talkative, as you may have noticed.
Oh, there's so much to say, and we didn't even scratch the surface today.
I did one last fall, and the woman that I did it with only has a 40-minute Zoom, and we ran out of time, and she said I have to have you back. So I'm hoping that she's going to contact me in the next couple of months and have me back to do another one, because we literally just ran out of time.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. That's why I have unlimited time because when we get talking, I don't want to be cut off, you know.
Well, I have to tell you, when I did the one with Terry, we get on and we start chatting, and we chatted for an hour and a half before he recorded anything.
Oh my gosh.
It was hilarious. We just started talking, and it's like, and finally I said to him, "Well, Terry, didn't you want to actually do a record this for a broadcast?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I guess we need to do that." So funny. So funny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sharon, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I will definitely make sure that people get the link all over the place once it's up.
Awesome.
Thanks
Awesome.
again.
And thank you so much for being with us today. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning into the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where we share tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Remember to visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Fiction Writers Podcast.